Good morning. Merry Christmas to everybody who celebrates that. Happy holidays otherwise. Yeah, we had some issues with this engine the other day, so I'm going to check to see. There, it's still sitting around in frame, more or less. So I'm going to pop the top off this. It's an issue that's been kind of regular, having the valves on this not seat quite right. When I took it apart last week and put it back together, I did put a couple drops of oil in through the spark plug hole to make sure the top of the cylinder was getting lubricated again. So I guess I could have put too much oil in there too. So get our spark plug out of the way and pop the top off this and take a look down in there. Actually, probably, yeah, let's get the camera up so that we can be looking inside there. There. It'd be easier for me to tip that a little bit and point in there as we go. But yeah, I don't know what international places have stores like Harbor Freight, but they have a place. The screwdriver I used to get that spark plug out is a cheap Harbor Freight one. It doesn't, work for anything serious, but it's just right for working on things like this because there's no high torque involved. This little socket set I have is another tiny cheapo kit for doing little work like this, and as long as nothing is torqued down or Loctited together on stuff, it works pretty good. So alright, the head there is pretty good. There's not a ton of oil on the top here. I was afraid if I'd put so much oil in there that it might have been really mucking about in there, but it's not too bad. Wipe that again, and then try to look at those valves. Both valves look the same, so it must be blowing back out the intake a little bit. Let's see here. I'll take the little flathead out of my screw set here and use it to carefully pop this clip off. That is the intake valve. There. Actually has a visible lapping ring, which is nice. but you can see that it's still getting, there's a big black spot on that seat, so that's where it's blowing by. So that's why when I put this engine together, sometimes it seals okay and other times it just does not, because that valve is not, when it's turned just right, it seals kind of okay, but when it's not lapped in right. I don't have any lapping compound, and I don't have any cheap toothpaste. When I was doing model railroading, the secret to getting small gears ground together real nice was to invest in some cheap toothpaste, because the thing that makes it cheap is they substitute grit instead of anything, you know, fancy and expensive. So cheap toothpaste has a lot of lubricating properties and cheap grit in it, and it always did a pretty good job. The key is that unlike a lot of other stuff, it can take some effort to get it cleaned off. So I think what I'm going to do here is, this is some serious cowboy level engineering here. I'm going to take this piece of wet or dry sandpaper, place it over the valve hole, decide how to punch that hole. Maybe that's not such a clever plan, huh? Let's do that. We'll put the valve in place and fold that bit of sandpaper under there. And then one light pass on the seat, and then pull down and gently rotate that valve against it. Alright, now I got rid of that blow-by mark, and yeah, I'm not using a ton of pressure here because I don't actually want to change the valve shapes that much. I just want to see if I can put some, you know, circular scoring marks in there, and then like the very lightest ones, nothing serious. Also, I'm looking at this, and I wonder if this intake valve spring is any different from the exhaust spring. So it doesn't really feel different, and especially on bigger engines for hit and miss, you absolutely can feel a difference in the two valves. But put that back on, clip in place, and we'll Pop the exhaust valve now and look under there. I think I'm gonna okay. The springs don't look real different because the intake is a 5 coil and the exhaust is 5.5, which is just enough to make a difference. But if we look at the valve there's a nice shiny ring around most of it, and then there's a spot on the side that's kind of burnt from blow by. And of course the exhaust stem is covered in soot. Because the other thing about hit and miss engines is they run cold enough that they deposit all the soot they produce very early on in the exhaust system. Not that there's much exhaust system, but if you put a long exhaust on them, all the soot builds up right outside the head because there's not enough heat to keep it moving further down. The inside of that seat actually looks pretty good, and this does have relatively good compression, so with that valve, like the way it looks, it's not actually real bad on the exhaust. I don't know if we can see that, but there's no major spot with the blow-by indicator like on the intake, so just having wiped that pretty thoroughly. Also give it a little rotation, but I'm not going to try to clean it any. I'm just going to let it go there. It seems to be fine. So, putting this all together. Nice thing about tiny clips like this is that they can be generally pushed on by hand. Bigger clips, you gotta have a pair of pliers to force them on, but yeah, alright. Pretty satisfied with that. So I do need to find a way to put a proper vent on here so it doesn't keep shooting all the oil and oil vapor out of the engine all the time. Because right now that wet sump can't get filled very full before it starts to just spray oil and oil vapor out of this straight vent here. But I know a lot of people online throw fits about these little engines because they're kind of fiddly, but the thing is, the whole outfit from China is, $350 or so, $400 American, and you're not making that in America to any kind of standard like that for that price. Alright, I snugged these up now, tightening and just a hand tight twist, and kept the head gasket in place. It's just beyond finger tight there. And of course, if you make one of these yourself, because you've got all the equipment, the bar stock is going to be quite a bit, and then the time to put one of these together is just a pretty big investment. So for the shortcut of how much these are, I actually like the bit where I get to fiddle with them and keep them going and not have to feel like there's going to be a constant need for a lot of replacement parts, as it were. So got it back together. We'll see if it getting a little bit of compression there. I think that intake valve is opening up, of course. It's hard to tell what the noise is because that hole there causes a sucking sound like on a regular hit and miss when there's no sump and vent there making a sucking noise. You can sometimes hear the intake stroke. I get the starter rope and spin this a little bit and see if I can see the intake valve move. No, I don't think I saw the intake valve move. Well, we're gonna I'm smart. If I take that out, then it won't make so much noise. Okay. Exhaust. Alright, I think I hear it making a little bit of suction noises there, so through the intake. So we'll find out if it runs in a little while. It's 10 degrees American here today, so which is, below 0 centigrade. It's not supposed to be much warmer tomorrow, Saturday, so we'll find out tomorrow if I can get this to go. The engines don't really like the cold, but we'll see what we can do tomorrow morning. Hopefully this is gonna settle in and run for a little bit again.